Hi, this is Lori Kerr from PLD Department with another training video. This video is going to demonstrate how to use the Grackle Docs extension to check for accessibility in a Google Doc. So in the basics video, we showed you how to get Grackle Docs installed and where it's located. So this is a document that's relatively old, so I know I wasn't applying any kind of accessibility considerations when it was developed. So I want to go in and check what things maybe need to be fixed in order to make this a more accessible document for the stakeholders who would be using it. So in this case, this document would be used in the classroom, and I would want to make sure that all of my students could access it readily. So to launch Grackle Docs, I'm going to go to the Extensions menu. And once I click on it, it shows me Grackle Docs. Remember, I installed this already, and I'm just going to launch it. So once it launches, it's going to bring up a window on the right-hand side of this document, and it will start the accessibility check. Grackle Docs will check several different areas for accessibility. So the first thing it's going to check is whether the document has a title and what language has been identified for the document. It's going to check images to determine if they have alternative text, if it should be marked as an artifact, if there are equations that are being used, they should be described, and it will also check to see if the images need to be reduced in terms of their file size. It's going to check for headings. Remember, we want to have document structure to ensure that someone who uses a screen reader can navigate quickly through a document by tabbing through headings. It's going to check your tables if you have included tables, and obviously this document has some tables, and we need to do some fixing to them. And it's going to check for landmarks. This particular accessibility checker likes to see both a header and a footer used. We don't often use those. So this is, because it's a brown label, it's a suggestion, but it doesn't need to be changed to meet the level AA requirement. So I'm probably going to ignore that as I don't need a header or a footer in this document. And then it's going to also just check some general contents. It will check for color contrast. It's going to check font size. It will check it to see if you've used all caps, because we should avoid using that. When we align text, like when we center it, that's sometimes hard for a screen reader to read. But as we'll notice here, it's a green with a little red on it. It says it passes with warning. So we have 4 of those issued here. For a level AA, it passes. So I'm going to start looking at some of these things. Now, I know that when this document was created, I was not thinking about alternate text. So I'm going to click on this. It says images should have alternate text or mark as an artifact. I know that this did not get alternative text included, and yet it's reading as though it did. So I'm going to go in here and look at all of my image options. Once I click on the image, I get this sub menu. I have 3 dots here. 3 dots always means there's more that we can access. So I'm going to the all image options, and here it tells me all the things I can do with this image. Well, in this case, I'm going to look at the alternative text. Well, in fact, it does have alternative text, but look at what that alternative text is. It just says that it's a screenshot of that's a picture file. So that's not really very descriptive. I want to say this is the Starry Night painting by Vincent van Gogh, because that's what it is. And that's all I need. Even though it passed for alternative text or images, that alternative text was not descriptive enough. So I went ahead and fixed that. So I want to look at the things that it did flag. It says, remember we talked about headings, it passes with a warning. the tables. So our tables must be tagged. So I'm going to start looking at tables. Without Grackle Docs, without this extension, I can't assign header rows to tables in a Google document. So this is a really important tool to help us utilize tables, especially for those of us that use them as layouts. So in this case, I have a table. If I click on locate, it's going to show me which table we're referring to, and then I can click the little tag button and it allows me to tag it. So for this one, I don't really have information here. I'm really just using that table for layout. So I'm going to mark that as table is used for layout only. I'm not trying to share any information. In fact, I'm just using this as a container for a student to record their information. So I'm going to update that one. Then I want to go to the next table, which should be this read number 2, reading through a lens. And it also needs to, this one I'm going to say actually needs to have that header row because it suggests what should be included in each column. And I'm going to update that. And the last one I'm going to use as just a layout. So I located it, I'm going to tag it. It takes a little bit of time to kind of open up. There we go. Tag the table, I'm going to tag that one as layout only. Okay, so we took care of those tables. We can have empty cells. It doesn't really like empty cells, but it does pass with the warning. So we know we've got a lot of empty cells in those tables, but we're going to let those go. Okay, we have the other thing that I know we don't have in this document is we don't have any structure. And if I go to document structure, it tells us that we have more than one heading 1. We don't have any other headings identified. And so that's something that we want to do. We want to structure the document. And if we look over here, we can tell that we do have some structure to it, but it's not the structure I want. So in this first item here, that I do want to have that to be my heading 1 because that's kind of the title of the document. It gives us that solid structure, and everything that follows is going to fall beneath it. We only want to use heading 1 once whenever we are creating a Google Doc. So that would be part of the problem here, because when I go down here to article, it also says heading 1. So I want to make that heading 2 because it is subsequent to the title. So I'm going to apply heading 2, and actually I'm going to say update heading 2 to match, so that anytime I use heading 2, it's going to have that same format. So now it falls underneath the digital close reading. This is also identified as heading 1. I don't want this to be heading 1. In fact, I just want this to be normal text. And I'm going to update normal text to match that as well, because I don't really want to change the font. I like that. So there we go. We've got normal text. Now, anything that was identified as normal text just changed to match that. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of adjustment. I'm going to undo that because it applied that coloring and the underlining that accompanies a hyperlink. So I'm going to undo, and I'm going to, I do want to call this normal text, but I'm going to go ahead and say apply normal text and then redo the formatting, because I don't want this to be bold. I believe that that font was not this. It was this. There we go. And this can also be that same font. So I didn't really want to change the font. I just wanted to change the structure of it. Next is this item. This item, which is the title of that first table, I want to change as a heading 2, and I want to apply heading 2. And then same thing here, apply heading 2. And finally, apply heading 2. Now, I have a structure for my document. I have one main heading with 3 subheadings. I've identified my tables. I've provided alternative text. Now I want to recheck it. I'm going to see if it passes the check. And it passes this time. Again, we had some of those that were passed with a warning. Again, the centered text, it doesn't particularly like that, and it doesn't have a header or footer, and we do have some empty cells. But the tables pass, our headings pass, our images pass, and now when we look at document structure, that should be a little cleaner as well. Now it shows there aren't problems with the document structure, so they haven't been flagged, they're not red. They identify the heading and the text that should be just normal text as well. So that is a brief rundown of how you use Grackle Docs to check for accessibility in a Google Doc.